Hello, football fans. Got another set of games this week, week 15 of the NFL season. We're nearly to the end. And yes, the Packers did lose yesterday, but they'll be back for sure. I don't think they're done by any means. And yeah, last week was another bad week of picks. Lots of games where I had a chance to change them right before the game, but I'm a integrity guy. Try and stay with my initial picks as best as possible, but we'll go into it with another set of games. A couple of Thursday game, a couple of Saturday games this week, because the NFL thinks you need to have regular football on Saturday, even though they kind of suck, to be honest. But let's get into it with our first game of the week. The Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders coming off an all-time terrible offensive performance against the Vikings. The Chargers without Justin Herbert for the rest of the year. Easton Stick did admirable in his recovery job after Herbert went out. I mean, they still lost the Broncos by a lot, but at the very least he showed that maybe he has something out there to replace that. I would probably go with the Raiders in this game for sure. I don't think they perform as poorly as they did last week, and the Chargers, as we know, aren't really going anywhere this year. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a new coach next year, probably. I mean, I say probably because for all the times that Brandon Staley could have been fired, he's still around somehow. Maybe they're just waiting until the end of the year to fire him, and the day after the season, boom, you're gone. But I think the Raiders will win. I think they'll bounce back. They're still out of the playoffs. I mean, they're not mathematically eliminated yet, but let's be honest, they're pretty much eliminated, to be honest. But the Raiders win, I think, 20-17. Should be a reasonably fought match. These two teams play pretty well. I think Easton Stick showed enough last week to show that he can maybe perform with Keenan Allen and other players out there. Don't think he's going to be terrible by any means, but probably just not enough to win. Next, we have Minnesota and Cincinnati, one of the more interesting games of the week. Minnesota coming out that same terrible game against the Raiders, losing Justin Jefferson, but there's a good chance for him to play this week. And the Cincinnati Bengals coming up with a rousing win over the Indianapolis Colts. Jake Browning, give him props. He was looked pretty darn good. And the Bengals fans probably thought their season was over. Now it's like there's renewed optimism that they can get into the playoffs, and they have a really good shot to get in. They're 7-6. Jake Browning is playing well. Joe Mixon is really pulling his weight lately. The defense is really strong, and yeah, it's going to be a really tough game for Minnesota to win, especially if they play like last week. The Vikings play like they did last week. They're not going to win. They're just going to get absolutely demolished. I'm going to go with the Bengals in the upset special this week, even though I don't really think this is much of an upset, though a lot of people would probably pick the Vikings to win. I just think even if Justin Jefferson plays, their team was not great last week. Yes, their defense played very well, but their offense was putrid. Josh Dobbs is probably done with the Vikings for this year and maybe ever. And Nick Mullins probably will be able to provide some bit of offense this week. I don't think he'll be as bad as Josh Dobbs was, because, to be honest, it would really be hard to be as bad as Josh Dobbs was last week. But I think the Bengals win 24-17. Close game for the most part. I think Cincinnati pulls away just because they think they have a better team overall. And the Bengals get one step closer to the playoffs. Next, we have Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. Wow, Pittsburgh is going the wrong way and fast. What happened to the Pittsburgh Steelers? Well, I suppose they've just played a bunch of bad teams at the beginning of the year, just managed to get lucky in a couple wins. The past 2 weeks, they've looked dreadful, losing to two of the worst teams in the league, two teams that are basically playing or tanking, more or less. Although, to be honest, maybe the Patriots are. I don't think the Cardinals really are tanking. They're playing well as best as they can hope to play and being feisty as well. And Indianapolis coming off that loss, yeah, It was a really tough loss for Indianapolis to lose, but I think they have a really good shot to come back in a big way this week. For sure, Jonathan Taylor's probably still a week away, I would think. But Pittsburgh, their defense has been absolutely dreadful. And I like Indianapolis offense to bounce back this week in a decent way. Pittman has been coming on. Downs has been good. Zach Moss has been running pretty well. Their defense is feisty at times, although they didn't play very well last week. And the Steelers are just, I don't know, they're just stuck. They're just stuck in a mediocrity loop. When will they get better? When will they fire Tomlin? Because I think after this year, I think despite all of his winning seasons, what have they won? They've been to the playoffs like 3 times in the last 7 years or so. And what have they done with it? Absolutely nothing. But the Rooneys are the Rooneys. They don't just fire coaches. They just retire them, as Urinating Tree would say. But I go with Indianapolis. It's Indianapolis, so I'll give them the edge. I think they win pretty handily, to be honest. I think they win 28-17. I don't think it's going to be that close. Why the Steelers continue to give it to Najee Harris, even though it's just, I don't want to say Najee Harris is Trent Richardson, but he's looking a lot like Trent Richardson. Let's be honest. He's looking really bad. He's looking exactly like Trent Richardson did after his 3rd year. He's just lost all confidence in, Kenny Pickett, and we all know how bad Trubisky is, but yeah. Indianapolis wins 28-17. It's not going to be a pretty game. Next, we have Denver and Detroit. Another great game. Denver, wow, now have more wins than the Packers do, and Denver started out with 2 wins this year. I mean, they've looked great. Their defense, wow, what a turnaround happens when all your injuries come back healthy. I mean, Russell Wilson has been playing pretty well. Javonte Williams looks like his old self before he got injured, which is great news for them. And it's good to see Javonte Williams is a good young running back. I didn't want his career to end after one really bad injury. He's come back strong. They have a good duo of running backs in there behind him with Joel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine. Their wide receivers have been pretty good. Cortland Sutton has been the star for sure, although Judy has had his moments as well, and that defense has been fantastic. Now Detroit, their offense did not play well last week. They did not. They haven't played well for the past month. And yes, a lot of people made fun of me for saying that the Packers were one of the best teams in the NFC, but let's be honest, they have been. Up until Monday night, they were objectively playing better than the Lions, and they had won a bunch of games, and Detroit nearly lost to the Bears twice, and had the Saints had a decent offense or more consistent offense, they would have lost 4 games in a row. And had Detroit lost those 4 games in a row, everybody would think, oh, Detroit's not back. They need to come out strong. They need to come out and beat the Broncos. They just need to throw all day long. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. He had a really bad week last too. And that defense needs to be better. Jazz has to be better. Their secondary is not good. Give your defensive coordinator a break and actually try and keep his job, because if you don't, the Broncos are going to win. The Lions are going to continue to sink further. They're still probably going to win the division. I'm not going to be crazy and say that the Lions are going to win the division, but until the Lions prove me otherwise that they can be consistent, I'm going with Denver. Their defense has been great. And Detroit and the Lions' defense has not been good, although their offense is still pretty good. They didn't play a good last week. Going to have to improve, but I'll go with the Broncos 24-21 in a very close match, but got to give it to Denver for now until Detroit can show that they can be a little more consistent. Next, we have the Saints and the Giants. The Giants coming off that big win over the Packers, even though Tommy DeVito didn't play that well. Saints coming out a big way, even though looking at Derek Carr, it's like, why is Derek Carr in there? I mean, I know you need to win, but God, coming back that soon after concussion and all the other injuries he suffered, man, that's really risky, especially with all the money you owe him. My God, you owe him a lot of money and just a lot of money to that team in general. Saints are closing in on one of their last rides, and if they're going to make the playoffs, this is probably the year to do it. That division is terrible, and they have a golden opportunity to blow forward and make the playoffs, and it would be a big win to win this game. Although, to be honest, in the past, I've noticed as a Saints fan, playing against the Giants, they lose to the Giants quite a lot, just like the Packers. The Packers and the Saints both have this nasty habit. No matter how bad the Giants get at times, the Giants seem to win. So if the Saints want to buck that trend and get closer to the playoff race, they're going to have to win. And I think they have a really good shot to win this game. Although the Giants can be sneaky good, and we've seen what the Saints defense has done against running backs, and running backs have had decent games. Saquon Barkley's, if the Giants want to win, he's going to have to play a little bit better. No random fumbles like he had the Monday night game against the Packers. Tommy DeVito, just keep throwing and just keep not making mistakes. I guess that's the best thing I can say about Tommy DeVito is just lately he hasn't made a lot of mistakes, although the first couple of games he didn't have any mistakes last night against the Packers, but we'll see what happens. I think the Saints will ultimately win. It's in New Orleans, so maybe that gives them the edge, but I think it is, just like I said against the Packers, it is a trap game. Kamara has been strong. Just pound the rock with Kamara, and you're golden. And you have a great chance to win. Also, Olave has been pretty darn good since he had his issues, but keep it on, Saints, if you want to win. I think the Saints win 27-21, but it should be a very hard-fought game and an interesting one at that as well. Chicago and Cleveland. Cleveland with the big win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chicago with the big win over the Lions. Fields has been playing well. Moore has been playing well as well. I still don't think this really saves Fields. I still think Fields has a lot of issues. He's just been playing very well, so you really can't criticize him right now as long as he's avoiding the interceptions and just playing really good overall offense. The Cleveland Browns, their defense is still great. Their offense is kind of disjointed at times, but they seem to do enough. And David Njoku came out of nowhere and had a great game and really helped them win against the Jaguars for sure. Even though they almost pissed the game away in the end, or at least got a lot closer than it probably should have been. The Bears are playing well. I think I'll give the edge to the Browns. Although, Packers, watch out for the Bears. I mean, if the Packers don't rebound after week's loss against the Giants, they could find themselves in last place, and no one wants to see the Packers in last place behind the Bears. I will go with Cleveland to win. I think their defense will be too much for Fields, but I think it is should be an equally decent game. Cleveland wins 20-17, something like that. Relatively low scoring game, but I think in the end Cleveland wins. Atlanta and Carolina, another toss-up game. And another game, if you're the Saints, you're hoping Carolina wins. You're hoping Carolina wins because this is another game where Atlanta is probably going to look a lot better than what they are, even though we know that Atlanta is really trash and their offense is terrible at times, even though they played reasonably well last week. They're just not the greatest team in the world, and their defense, while they have some good pieces, aren't great overall. But Bijan Robinson had a good game last week. Maybe he can keep it going, even though, let's be honest, Bijan Robinson's season this year has been kind of underwhelming. It's been nowhere near the top 5 running back you expected him to be, but honestly, those standards for him to be that high were unreasonable to begin with, let's be honest. The Panthers, again, they just keep sinking lower. It's like it seems like they're tanking, but they're tanking for nothing because they don't have a first-round pick next year. And man, David Tepper has messed up that franchise so poorly. But he's not going to sell it because he's just one of those a-holes that wants to meddle in your team's future with literally no knowledge of the game. Not saying that I could do any better, but we all know David Tepper is terrible. And please, I mean, he's yearning for the days of Jerry Richardson. Let's be honest. David Tepper is terrible. And Bryce Young is a good young quarterback, but he has no help whatsoever. Although Hubbard had a decent game last week, still, they just don't have a lot on offense. They don't have a lot to play with. And it's just probably going to be another loss. Atlanta wins 24-10. It's probably going to be a low scoring like that again for the Carolina Panthers. But, maybe they'll surprise. The NFC South teams do like to beat up on each other a fair bit. So maybe the Carolina Panthers can surprise. I just don't think it's going to be this game. Atlanta wins 24-10. And it shouldn't be that great of a game to watch, to be honest. It's one of those games that you just turn off and just make your pick and you just root from afar. Next, we have the Jets and Miami. Wow, what an interesting game now. Miami with the surprising loss to Tennessee. Although, to be honest, their offense wasn't great, and they really did deserve to lose that game. They really did. I mean, you fumble away, then what do you expect to happen? But the Jets coming off a big win against Houston. The game was ugly. It was rainy, but the Jets managed to pour on a lot of points. Zach Wilson looked great. Maybe, just maybe, he still has a future in the league. Maybe he can be an understudy under Rodgers when Rodgers returns next year. Maybe, just maybe, that can happen. I think this is going to be a far more interesting game than people give it credit for. Boy, how things have changed since a couple weeks ago when the Jets just got utterly decimated on Black Friday by the Dolphins. It's going to be a completely different game. The Jets' defense is for real, and their offense is starting to come along. And if Zach Wilson can play like he did last week against the Texans, the Jets have a really good shot to win. Tyreek Hill got hurt last week. He was able to come back, but we'll see what happens. Jalen Waddle had a decent game, and Mostert looked a lot better than Ashane last week. But Tua didn't have the greatest game in the world. Made a lot of mistakes. Took a lot of really bad sacks. I mean, Tua looked kind of lost at times. And despite Tennessee missing out on Jeffrey Simmons in that game, it's just like, why? Also, Monday Night Football with the two screens approach, don't do that again. It's terrible. I wanted to watch the Packer game full screen the whole time last night. I don't want to see the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans games. Even though it was a lot closer and the Titans ended up winning, I don't want to see that. But Miami should win, but I think the Jets can make it an interesting game, 27-24 Miami. And if the Jets are able to force Tua to throw into turnovers, they have a really good shot to win. Don't be surprised if the Jets win and Miami's December struggles continue. Next, we have Kansas City and New England. Let's just say it straight up. Kansas City should come back in a big way. I mean, their offense is still struggling, and New England's defense has had their moments, but New England beat up on a really bad Pittsburgh team last week. Ezekiel looked pretty great. I think Zeke could have a decent game this week again, to be honest. But I think Kansas City wins just because they had 2 straight losses, and Mahomes has made a total ass of himself at times. I think Kansas City comes out in a big way. It is in New England, so maybe New England has an edge, and you know how Belichick likes to play in games like this. You know, he'll have New England prepared and ready to go with a couple extra days rest, but I think Kansas City wins fairly easily, 24-13. Maybe, just maybe, the Patriots can conjure up what they did last week and give it a good game. I think Kansas City wins, and I don't think it's all that close, but maybe New England can surprise. Next, we have Houston and Tennessee. Houston with the concerning loss last week against the Jets. Tennessee with the surprising win over the Miami Dolphins. And now you're looking at Houston's playoff chances as, they'll probably still make the playoffs, but makes you wonder. Tank Dell was already out for the season. Nico Collins went out early last week. Who knows if he'll be able to play this week, but all of a sudden, as soon as Stroud starts to lose some of those wide receivers, he doesn't start to look very good. I mean, Stroud looked absolutely terrible last week, and that when he had that concussion, it didn't look very good. It was down for a while, and you thought, is he going to be able to come back? Of course, the game was far out of reach, so there's a good reason why he didn't come back. But had it been close, it's like you look at it like, no, he can't. He can't come back in. And Tennessee, good old Derrick Henry, he seems to defy age. He seems to just keep pounding away. Didn't have the greatest game against Miami, but he was efficient and got a couple touchdowns and really helped propel the Titans to the win. Will Levis has a real future in the league. All the memes about him being terrible, I think the Titans found their future quarterback. And yeah, Malik Willis, of course, Malik Willis doesn't get a shock. Well, let's be honest, Will Levis in his games in the NFL has looked like a far better quarterback than Malik Willis ever could have hoped to be. Always a fluke gadgety player, and probably not long for this world in the NFL anyway. But I think I'll go with Houston. But it really depends on the health of C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins, because their running game wasn't great last week either, and their defense looked terrible. To be honest, they just looked terrible in the rain. But I'll give the Houston Texans the benefit of the doubt. They've proved me wrong more than once this year, so I'll go with Houston to win 24-17. Should be a good game, though. Next, we have San Francisco and Arizona. San Francisco should win this game pretty easily on paper, but Arizona's coming off a bye, and they've been feisty of late. Trey McBride is coming on as a tight end. He's becoming a really good target for Kyler Murray. James Conner's had a couple of good games as well. But I think the overwhelming defense of San Francisco on that offense, and even though their offense didn't play that well at times last week, still had 3 guys over 100 yards. And that's no fluke. The 49ers are definitely the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. Barring injury, you really can't say anybody else is going to win over the 49ers unless something bad happens to their team injury-wise. San Francisco wins pretty handily, to be honest. Although these two teams have played each other close at times, I'm going to give it to San Francisco to win 28-13, something like that. Maybe Arizona can surprise, but I don't know. I think San Francisco keeps it going in a big way and charging forward and keeping that number 1 spot. Next, we have Washington and LA. The Commies are coming off a bye. LA coming off a loss against Baltimore, but they look pretty darn good. Washington is just a mess. We all know they're going to have a different coach next year probably in their defense. Who knows what they're doing on defense? They have such a good defensive line. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know what their defensive coordinator is doing, to be honest. I think LA wins in a big way in this one. It's in LA. Kieran Williams has been great. Puka Nacua, or Cooper Kupp, is back to being a favorite target of Matthew Stafford. And, of course, Matthew Stafford has been great. Defense has had their moments at times, but didn't look the greatest last week at times. But I think the Rams will win pretty decently, 28-17. Not going to be a really good game for Washington. Brian Robinson can come back and play like he has at times this year. They have a decent shot. But to be honest, the Rams are looking more and more like a playoff team. And yeah, don't have much hope for the Commies to win this game. Next, we have Dallas and Buffalo. Buffalo has gone up in the betting rankings this week, having a decent winning percentage to win over Dallas Cowboys. Dallas coming in of the big win over the Eagles, and I think this could be a real trap game for Dallas. I know, they've been playing so well. But you know, Cowboys fans, you know how the Cowboys are at times. And their track record against Buffalo over the years has not been great over the past several years the Buffalo Bills have won, and won convincingly, might I add. I think the Bills have a real chance to win. Their defense has been playing much better, getting much more pressure on the quarterback. I mean, they looked really good attacking Patrick Mahomes last week. And Josh Allen, yes, he throws his interception every game, but he's still at the top for touchdowns in the league, or he leads the league in passing touchdowns, I believe. I may be wrong. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe I heard that he's the leader in touchdowns. James Cook looking good. I mean, when the Bills run the ball, their offense looked pretty darn good. They sputtered a little bit in that game against the Chiefs, but their defense held on strong, were able to get the win. And no, Chiefs fans, your team was not stolen, did not have a victory stolen from you. Kadarius Toney was offsides, clearly. It's just blank as your freaking day. And the Bills win, I think, in this one, 27-24. It's going to be a very high scoring game. Of course, CeeDee Lamb is still going to get his targets, and Dak is still going to have a good game. But I think Dak throws an interception somewhere in this game, and the Bills win 27-24. The Bills keep their playoff hopes alive. You can tell me I'm wrong in the comments below, but you know, Cowboys fans, you know that your history with Buffalo over the last couple of years and that it's not good. So think about that. Next, we have Baltimore and Jacksonville. A surprisingly good game. And man, for Jacksonville, they had their sights on the playoffs on a golden platter. But now it's like, probably still make the playoffs, but they're looking less and less likely every day. Last week, you watched them and like, why is Trevor Lawrence out there? Why? You could have just given him a rest, maybe taken a loss, and then have him ready to go for this game. And it must win now. They must win this game to keep their division hopes alive. I mean, they are leading in the division, but the Houston Texans are riding in their tail. And surprisingly, Tennessee isn't completely out of it just yet. So, also the Colts as well. There's a really decent race for that AFC South position, so they're going to have to come out strong. They want to win. Hopefully, Trevor Lawrence will be ready to go. Baltimore looked great last week. Lamar Jackson has been a true MVP candidate all year. Their defense has stayed healthy, which has definitely helped. Good running the ball. Zay Flowers is becoming more and more like the player everybody thought would be. Odell Beckham had a good game last week. Maybe in terms of a letdown this week, we'll see. But I think Baltimore wins this one. No, it's going to be a close game. I think Jacksonville is going to come out strong, and it's going to be a really close game. I think Baltimore wins in the end, but Baltimore wins 30-27. But I give Jacksonville a fair shot to win the game. And last but not least, we have the Philadelphia Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks. The must-watch game of the week. ESPN was already pumping it up in the middle of the first quarter of the Packers game. Like, come on, give the Packers their due. But Philadelphia has not looked great these past couple weeks, and Seattle looked fairly decent against San Francisco. I mean, they kept it in there, but to be honest, they're still not great. Who knows if Geno will play this week? I would expect Geno would be rested and ready to go, but I think Philly comes out in a big way. It is in Seattle, but I just can't see this Eagles team losing that many games in a row. Look for A.J. Brown to have a big game. Jalen Hurts, if he wants to regain any chance of winning MVP, he's going to have to play better, even though, let's be honest, Jalen Hurts has not been an MVP quarterback this year, and there's nothing you can say otherwise that would say he has. He hasn't been very great at times. And Seattle has a great shot to win. They definitely need to win if they want to keep their hopes alive, because, boy, the Seahawks are trending out of the playoffs right now. But I think they have a good chance to win. But I'll go with the Eagles to win 30-24, something like that. But if the Seahawks manage to win, would not be surprised in the slightest. But those are the picks for the week. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have a great night. God bless, and go Pack Go.